So I've done a bunch of research into aim training and video game training in general, and one of the things that comes up, and there's been actually a good amount of research into, is part training. And that just means breaking something down into its pieces and then practicing each piece, which in stuff like martial arts and sports and stuff, it's like a common practice to break things down into pieces and practice what's hard. Let's go! Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I'm excited. Why part training? Just because I say so? Just because Aimer7 says so? Aimer7 probably doesn't say that. No, don't do anything because someone just says so. Just because it logically makes sense. Let's look and see if someone studied it. And luckily, somebody has. So I looked at the study. This is the title of the study up above. And there's a link to the study, which will be in the description of the YouTube video. And this study has to do with not just part training, but like what happens when you do different types of training, and then introduce something that's a dual task. So it's like they have you tap your finger or do a word puzzle and see how your performance changes then. So how they did the study. They got 33 people aged 17 to 24 years old, and they had them play this game. This is Space Fortress. So they had these 33 college-aged people play this game, right? And they took these people and they had them run through a part of the game where you just spin your ship and shoot at mines coming in at you, like that blue dot you just saw. And the people who did really bad, like got under a certain score, were kicked out of the study. So this study is already kind of self-selecting, or not self-selecting, but literally selecting for people who are already kind of good at this thing. They use the joystick in this game. We'll go over that in a second. And they took these 33 people and had them do different training regimens. Now, how does this apply to video games?
Of instructions. Ship control.
We can look right here and see that using a joystick is similar to using a mouse.
Efficient movements
right?
Cause the ship to move diagonally.
So you have a joystick.
Stop the ship,
you have degrees of freedom, right?
Facing the opposite
just like a mouse, you can move like this.
And apply a slight thrust.
It's similar in complexity, right? It's not like we're looking at
the fortress.
learning a martial art or a sport versus using a mouse to aim. This was done in 1989, so they didn't have all sort of crazy things yet. Okay, so they took these 33 people and they split them up into 3 groups. Control, integrated, and hierarchical. Integrated, control, hierarchical. So these 3 groups all had the same number of training sessions with the same number of time. That's what's cool about this study. The other one, the control group, didn't even have any training sessions. So the control group got 10 hours of just playing the game. They got instruction on the game, how to play it, and then they just played it for 10 one-hour chunks. The integrated group got the same training at the start, but then for 7 sessions, they got specific feedback and instructions on how to fly better. And for 3 of the sessions included with those 7 sessions, so sessions 4 through 7, they had instructions and feedback on how to shoot the mines that are in the game. Whereas the hierarchical group, the group that we're kind of interested in today, and the group that, spoiler alert, did better than these other 2 groups, the hierarchical group was given specific training in 27 sub-categories of this game, right? So, like moving the ship, shooting the mines, but like just accelerating, just decelerating, like splitting this thing up into extremely fine chunks. They block these chunks up into 5-minute blocks. So like you're going to spend 5 minutes practicing just this turning the ship, for example, 5 minutes just shooting at the fortress in the middle, 5 minutes just shooting at the mines. Like they took everything and broke it up into 5 minutes. So they had 26 things and they broke it all up into 5 minutes, with the exception of like a couple things they did for 2 and 3 minutes, probably simpler stuff. So they took these people and they broke them up into groups, right? So just looking at this, you would expect probably the integrated group to do better than the control group, because the control group just plays. Maybe you'd expect that, who knows? And the hierarchical group, you don't know, they're training parts. That's kind of what they were looking for. So control group, they just played. Integrated group, they got extra instruction and feedback. Hierarchical group, they got everything broken down for them into like super fine detail and then like practiced it. Benny, what are you doing? You guys playing? You guys playing? You guys messing everything up? Okay. So that explains part training in what sense. They took it, they just really broke the parts down, which is what I'm going to be doing today after we look at these few more descriptions of this stuff. I want to break aiming down, specifically static aiming, down into its like super component parts. Here's what the training sessions look like for this study. So each block for a specific scenario, just for a specific static, small static dots, but it could probably apply to static. It depends how granular we want to get. So this here shows their training periods and what happened. So the hierarchical group, integrated group, and the control group, these different shadings here just tell you like this was the hierarchical training, this was the integrated training where they got extra instruction, and this is just playing. Now they took their scores here when they were all just playing, trying to get the highest score. That was the instruction. And then they had them do more tasks here, like different tasks, like a word puzzle, other stuff that messes with your working memory, tapping something. They did a bunch of stuff. We won't get into that. And here are the scores. So because the control and integrated groups just played the game the whole time, essentially, they have scores here. Whereas the hierarchical group only has scores here. So we can see the results. That's why hierarchical only starts over here at the last 3. And then this study is 44 pages long, so I didn't go into the stuff I wasn't going to cover today. But their scores end up going even higher, the hierarchical group. The other ones go a little higher too. So, as you can see, this is kind of the learning curve for these two. The control started out a little higher. It's probably not outside of this chance. Integrated started out a little lower, but ends up going higher. And hierarchical, when they first do it, when they first switched to just playing the game, remember they were just practicing parts. When they first switched to playing the game, they seem to be lower, but they quickly overtake both groups as they play the game, which is cool, right? That's what we want to see. We want to see getting better faster. As we continue, they say in the study, it's worth noting, the hierarchical group continues to improve. We see the results. And we can see clearly that the hierarchical group goes higher and continues to go higher. Worth noting, though, they started lower. And that could go into kind of the things I've talked about before, where it's like the specificity of a task really matters. Which makes it even harder to figure out how to train, right? Because let's say we just look at this hierarchical group, we have them all practice one time, and the hierarchical group is lower, and you say, that didn't work, I give up. Then you walk away. When really they just had to learn how to apply the different parts that they learned together or separately, put them all together, and then all of a sudden, blam, they're out of the park. They're doing way better than the other people. So it's a good thing to say, like, you might not even know what's happening, and it might not be extremely apparent that what you did helped, but it may have helped. And just because you can't see it immediately doesn't mean it's not helping. So what do we get from this? Integrated is a little bit better than control, and hierarchical is a little bit better than integrated. So having some instruction and feedback is better. Breaking stuff down into super specific parts seems to be even better in this case. Break down your training, yes, Measy, exactly. So how do we apply this to shooting games? It seems to have a higher potential for efficiency of skill. Hey, just keep playing. Just play this on a loop. So we could apply it. I think we can definitely apply it in Kovacs, but we should be able to apply it in any game at all, right? Like, you want to get better at strafing in a game? You want to get better at counter strafing? You just strafe. You just counter strafe. You go in and you practice it. The only caveat I want to say to that is, remember the control group also. The difference between them and the integrated group was the integrated group got instruction, so we should look for instruction on how to get better at a thing from a reliable source. And 2, we need to have that feedback on how we did. So just trying it is probably not as good as trying it and then watching your videos. I don't think coaching is necessarily required in this case, because how do you vet the performance of your coach, right? Like, how can you even know that they're telling you the right things? They're probably better than someone off the street, maybe, but I think probably anybody can look at like a professional level player and then yourself and see the differences and see where things go wrong, and where the skill of someone who knows what's going on can come in. It'll probably be closer to like the little nuances, like, oh, you gotta try focusing on this aspect when you do this. Like the biggest thing for me with the click timing now, like a clicking as soon as I get on it, my confirmation time, right? Like that I couldn't have told somebody about that a month ago before I realized it. I was just click faster. That could be a place. But if they're not someone who thinks like that, if they just are someone, if it's a coach who's like, just do this for an hour a day and you'll get better, man. You'll get better, bro. Just do this. They're just telling you to do. They're just telling you to do this. They're just telling you to be the control group. Just go play games. This is what most people say. Just go play the game a lot. You get good. They just say play the game. Okay. It does work. It's not as efficient. And this is only the first 10 hours of training. I would love to see this same study at, you know, the 100-hour point or the 200-hour point. I think the other study I referenced did 40 hours. The other study in my other video that I have on YouTube about why your aim still sucks or the #1 mistake. But this shows the same thing and it's good to go over it. So this continues to go on. In this study, they talk about this dual task performance right here. So above me, where they had him do the other stuff. Weirdly, the integrated group did better at the dual task performance than the hierarchical group did. So it could be like that was statistically significant, which means there's like a 5% chance or less that it was due to chance. Could have been due to chance still. But it might be that the hierarchical group was actually less automatic with all their stuff, you know, because they had practiced each thing independently than the integrated group who practice it all the time. So when they're better at overall automaticity, it's just interesting to see. I could look up some more content about that. I know in my other study that I have on my YouTube, there is they did MRIs of their functional MRIs of their brain while they're playing, and the people who did the hierarchical design that practiced the different pieces, their brains were less active when they were doing the activity, which is an indicator of like more mastery. So they should be better at this. But that's still interesting. After this pipe, they were still not as good at the dual task. They're about the same as control. With that in mind, let's try to break down static stuff into its parts. Ideally, we will get a playlist of the parts, just like they did in the study, of like, okay, this part I'm supposed to focus on angles. This part I'm supposed to focus on confirmation time. So when I go to it, I boom, I can hit one thing and then the next, and, you know, go through the parts just like they did in the study. Set the training time for an hour. I've got these parts, and go for it. There's also that specificity though, right, of doing the whole task. So while I want to do only the parts, like I've already done so much training, I think it's probably useful to also do some of the specific task with the overall goal in mind. Let's break it down first. The anatomy of a flick looks like this, right? Big motion to target. And then we have the initial angle, travel a distance. We have to get on the target, so then we have to confirm, confirmation time, click. And here there might be a micro correct, but ideal motion would not be a micro correct, would there? There wouldn't be a micro correction. If you were extremely precise, you wouldn't need it. If you were like a robot. But in reality, there is one. Confirmation time, click, then move on time, and then we start again. In here, micro correction on super small targets. Here are a bunch of pieces we can use. In reality, there's several ways that you can do this big motion, right? You could do it in one extremely fast motion, but then you don't have any time to correct. But we should try to speed all of this up if we want to get faster and better. I take accuracy here as a given because shooting without accuracy is pointless, right? Like there is no point in shooting if you're not on the target. Every time I've practiced just going fast and forgetting about accuracy, I just get sloppier and it's no good. You should always have accuracy in mind. Even if you're not successful, if you're trying as hard as you can to get it, that's probably the way to do it. So we can practice our initial angle, which is more important than practicing just angle, I think. I think initial angle is probably the way to think about it. Practice the distance to the target. That's kind of hard to conceptualize, but you should pay attention to if you're over or under and try to correct it. We can practice confirmation time by getting on the target and clicking as soon as we're on it. And then clicking. I don't think we need to practice clicking, but clicking and moving. I like practicing clicking and moving. By someone in my chat told me once, like, just think of clicking and moving at the same time. And that really helped to reduce the move on time and right back into the start again. So for practicing on small targets, which is what I want to make a playlist for today. I'm going to add also in micro correction on super small targets before confirmation time. Okay, so the first one, angles. I feel like angles, if I want to break angles down into a way I can just do my hardest ones, I feel like Elevatiles version 3 is a good one. On this one, oh, nope. On this one, I can practice, or anyone can practice specific. Wow, that's so much better than last time I practiced it. The last time I practiced this, I had a lot more trouble with this specific angle. So you can practice any angles at a distance that you want, right? So I can practice this angle. And because it kind of just responds, it responds so quickly, it's really good for training ones you're bad at. So I could go through like this, and I noticed that one was bad, so let me do it till I've got it down. I did a little arch when I shouldn't have, and then go up to there. So I got that one, and then I can come back to here till I do a good job. So I think I'll put this, I'll format my playlist right now as through the anatomy, just like we did it. I might switch it to random later, because I've seen some other studies talking about how random can be really good for maintaining it once you understand what's going on. If it's a really complex task and you don't know what's going on, then random isn't as good usually. Next up, another angled one. One wall, two target small. Add it. Okay, so that's longer. The angles will be randomized now. So we do 5 minutes of this one. That one's also 5 minutes. So now we have a 10 minutes just on angles. 10 minutes on angles. Next up is the distance. So one wall, two targets small also deals with different distances. But if we want to break down something that, like, so we can just practice distances, how would we do that? Wide wall, 3 targets. So in this one, I want to practice trying to be as close when I stop as possible. So I'm practicing parts of something. It's important I keep that focus in mind and pay attention to what I'm doing. But I also have to be fast, because if I'm not fast, then I'm not doing it normally. Moving quickly is different than moving slowly. Save. Okay. So there's one distance. Let's do another distance one. So another distance one could be, what is it? One wall, small wall, 20. There we go. This one. And I think this one's 30 seconds, so we'll go up to 10. Confirmation time. So confirmation time, getting on the target and clicking. I think we can practice that, and we don't have to be so specific with a small target, because that's a very specific skill, right? That's just getting on a target and clicking. That's why I think I've seen improvements with just playing Elevatiles, which was that first one. And then what else can we do? We should do, what's the one that Delight made?
Tomahawkcole.
Ah, not me.
You should work on your interesting function.
Okay. I'll work on my interesting function. Small static click timing breakdown. Okay, we've got snake tile small. Is Isaac your creation? No! Isaac found me in the bunker. Well, Isaac found me and brought me to the bunker, I should say. Isaac's creating me. Yes, Stinks, this is a real dumb question.
Opening of sauce.
Hurry up and improve your unattractive incineration.
You have to work on your unattractive incineration. Big motion to target, which means the initial angle we're practicing, distance we're practicing, confirmation time we're practicing, move on time. Let's specifically practice that on the 6-sphere hip fire voltaic, because why not? Oh, I didn't focus. I didn't do any for micro. Didn't do any for white micro. Is this a good one? Okay, I like this one.
J-May Zenith.
To improve, you must address your innate grandpa.
This is what we came down to. The microflicks part. Here's the thing. This is distance, and this is also distance. But one's for big distance, and one's for small distance. There. We'll separate it. This time I'm focusing on microflicks. This time I'm focusing on distance. Perfect. Well, we finished our playlist. I guess I will put a link to this playlist in the description below the YouTube video. And that's that. We'll see how it works. I'll probably end up changing it at some point or editing it. Right now it is 50 minutes, and I think I could do the last 10 if I wanted to do a full 60 minutes. But even 50 minutes is going to probably be more like an hour and 20 minutes of actual training, of actual time spent. So that's a good scenario right there. I'll put a link to this in the description under my YouTube video if anyone wants to do it with me. But this is the one I'm going to start with, and we'll see how we do with it over time. Every time I practice it, I'm going to practice it with these in mind. The initial angle, to practice my angles. The distance, practice getting as close to the target as possible in the initial movement. Micro correction, just the accuracy distance of my micro corrections. Confirmation time, specifically on something like Elevatiles. And then my move on time, specifically on 6-sphere hip fire. So hopefully, looking at things and looking at what you do and breaking it down into parts is helpful for like getting better at anything. We're gonna definitely do it going forward, and that is that. And for everyone who's watching on YouTube, thanks for watching on YouTube. All I can say is GG.
GG.